Hello, everyone, and welcome to Full-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. And welcome to part two of today's show. AJ, how you doing, mate?
I'm good as gold, my friend. Looking forward to another London derby.
Yeah, obviously we're here to preview the West Ham game, which is tonight. Big game for Fulham, big game for West Ham. It'd be nice to do another double over another London team. So, with that in mind, we'll start. We'll talk about the game as we mean to. There is some team news for Fulham. Obviously, we know Kevin is out, still haven't had surgery on his foot. Hopefully, we see him back for the end of the season. Anderson should be back from the stomach bug that sort of saw him out of the game against Spurs on Sunday. Harry Wilson, we do not know about just yet at the time of recording. Fulham haven't announced whether or not we're going to see him tonight. It will be good if we do, but don't be too surprised if we don't. For West Ham, I think the biggest one missing is I think Freddie Potts has got his last game of his suspension after his red card. But other than that, they are as they are. AJ, we'll start as we always start, mate. Let's talk about the squad going into this one. What are you expecting squad-wise from Fulham going into the game on against West Ham tonight?
See, it's a tough one because lots of Premier League sides, given this opportunity, playing against an almost guaranteed relegation team 3 days after another London derby, would start making changes to rejuvenate the squad. Marco Silva doesn't do that. So I'm expecting to see a lot of the same players with, unfortunately, our unanimous man of the match in Diop probably dropped for a coming back from a stomach bug Anderson, which might not be the smartest idea. But equally, I think we're going to see more of Tete, who was running on empty and at the end of that game against Spurs, against a, some would argue, a coming into form Somerville, who has been very on the front foot for West Ham over the last couple of weeks, probably trying to give himself a move in the summer, just trying to overperform, but he looks like the player they wanted to sign. So with that in mind, I'm concerned about our right side of defence with a tired Tete and a coming back from sickness Anderson. That aside, I think we're going to see a lot of what we expect to see, but up front we have some question marks. This is a lot of fixtures and quick congestion for Jimenez again. So maybe we see the return of Munez finally. We know he's fit. We know he's ready. Maybe we see him starting this game. And then there's the question marks with Wilson. Does that mean Chukwueze starts out on that right wing? Does that mean that Bob moves out to the right wing as Sessegnon gets pushed up? I simply don't know at this stage. But otherwise, I expect to see us a lot of the same players.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I want to see. I actually want to see Harry Wilson given a rest, even if he's fine. I want to see Chukwueze start a game. I want to see what we're going to see with a combination of Chuck, Oscar, and Oscar Bob on our wings. Because potentially it's what we're going to see going into next season. I think Fulham
Very
fans have
true.
to be realistic enough to know that Harry Wilson's probably not going to stay at the end of this season. I'll be very shocked if he does now. He's been linked with every other club in the world at the moment, so it's one of those things that it's no real shock that he's probably won't stay, and we have to prepare for that. Chukwueze is a player that we are likely to sign because we've only just got to pay the fee for him, which is pretty nominal for the player that I think we've seen so far from him. Uh, and I'm quite happy to see him come in and maybe give us a bit of pace going forward. West Ham traditionally this season have not dealt with pace very well. We know from playing them away from home, they like to keep the ball in the middle of the park, and they do that kind of well, but they don't score many goals and they concede a lot of goals, and usually that comes from pace. You look at the game at the London Stadium, we had one good breakaway in the whole game and we scored from it. And it's one of those things that, if we can keep pace, then we'll do well playing against them. West Ham is not going to be an easy game whatsoever. They are fighting for their lives at the moment, and out of all the teams that are down there at the bottom, they are the team that I think have the most fight in them. They are the most probably the squad that is least surprised to find themselves down there. You look at Tottenham; from Sunday, you didn't see where their fight was coming from, but you can see it you'll see it all over the park from West Ham players tomorrow night or tonight, we should say. So Fulham should be prepared for that. I think realistically though, this is the home game, and we should be concentrating on ourselves and what we can do well. That being said, what we did do well on Sunday against Tottenham was keep the ball, and move it fast, and some lovely link up play. I don't think West Ham are going to give Alex Iwobi the amount of space that Spurs did on Sunday. Um, he was brilliant. But for us, AJ, what do you think is going to be the most important thing for us pushing forward and trying to score more goals? Because I that's where our problems lied lately. It's been putting the ball in the actual net, right? So, what do you think we can do in this game to sort of try and remedy some of the issues that we've had?
Well, ultimately, we've got to be careful of the fact that West Ham are now playing with sort of that flat three in midfield, which gives them a lot of control over the middle of the park. We don't we tend to keep our players in midfield running in sort of their own positions, and because of that they can be very easily outnumbered in 2-on-1 situations. And I think it's important we don't let that happen in this game, and we try and keep control of the tempo of the football. Because if we allow West Ham to play the way West Ham want to play, it's going to be a very long night for us, with lots of diagonal balls in behind into Somerville and Bowen, trying to get in between our centre backs and our full backs, which, if Sessegnon is playing again, is going to leave Bowen an awful lot of space, to the point that, like, this is one of those fixtures. Do we bring Cuenca in and play Bassi at left back? Let Sessegnon play slightly further up, but give him the instruction, come back and support? Because realistically, Bowen on his day is probably one of the best wingers in the league. He hasn't shown that form entirely this season, but this is the sort of game where he might. So for us, we have to just be very careful of not playing into West Ham's hands, even though we're at home.
Yeah, there's a few interesting potential lineup things that can go on in this game, right? I highly doubt we're going to see Adama Traore start for West Ham, but he will probably come on at some point. We know that Adama that's gone to West Ham isn't the Adama that we signed. 2 years ago. He's definitely gone downhill, but he'll want to prove some people wrong. He'll want to prove some Fulham fans wrong for the way that we reacted to him leaving. There's an awful lot of joy around the fact that West Ham wanted to pay actual money for him, and he'll be annoyed by that. He won't be oblivious to the fact that a lot of Fulham fans didn't want him to stay. So it's not going to be. Wouldn't be too shocked if we see him come on and have a bit of a performance like the first couple of times he did for us when we played against Wolves, when he put in a couple of decent performances, right? Looking at this West Ham squad, you're right to pick out Somerville. He's a player who he's tricky. He has a lot of skill. He's good on the ball. He's probably let down by the players around him quite a bit. He's also been a bit hit and miss this season, but I think the last couple of games he has got slightly better. But with this West Ham squad, looking better doesn't necessarily mean they're great. We thought that they maybe turned the corner 5 or 6 games ago when they got a couple of wins under their belt, but they have looked poor of late. I know they were playing Liverpool at Anfield on the weekend, but if you watched any of the game, some of the manner and the goals that they conceded were shocking. Like the defending for them was absolutely ridiculous, and this is something that Fulham have to be able to jump on and maybe create from tomorrow night or tonight. We're gonna have to be able to make chances for ourselves against a team that probably will sit back a little bit and play on the counter because they're fast up top. And because of that, whoever is up front, be that Ray or be that Muniz, is going to have to be switched on. And we need to see that from them. Whoever plays that on the wings is going to have to, be good with the ball at their feet. To be fair, any of the three players that can play on the wing tonight, all played on Sunday at some point, and they all look great with the ball at their feet. So I'm not really too concerned about that. Cess does concern me because Bowen is a player that he's not as good as he has been but he's still a really good player, and he can't leave him. And Bassi has already got enough to do as a centre back to try cover his position too much. If we sort of got away with one a bit Spurs on Sunday because they didn't really push the line. Gallagher didn't have the ability to push the line like Bowen can, so we have to watch it. Centre back wise, I think we also have to be strong. It's an interesting one, really, when you look at it. This is going to be one of those games where I imagine personally Marco Silva's in-game management is probably going to have uh, a big sort of accumulation of what actually happens in the game. We aren't always the
Sorry,
most happy.
You've
We
lost
aren't
me there.
always,
Marco Silva's in-game management.
yeah, that's exactly it. Look, we're not always the most positive about it, right? But he's going to have to react to stuff tonight that he's going to have to do stuff about, right? Because whatever happens in the game, if we take a lead and we get comfortable, West Ham will come back. They'll fight back, and we'll have to react to it. If West Ham take a lead, we're gonna have to react to it, and we just don't see that happening all the time with him. Are you concerned at all as we look? Maybe look. Let's look at the. We're not looking over our shoulder anymore. I think we're all right for relegation this year. Let's look upwards and look for Europe, right? If we're going to make Europe, we're going to need to make decisions in games that mean that we win them. Have you got the faith that we can actually do that in these sort of moments, AJ?
Oh, it's tough. It's really, really tough because we seem to be hitting a decent run of form and not resting on our laurels as much as we normally do this time of year. And that's possibly good, but then we've just hit the 40-point mark, and that's normally a huge hurdle for us. Normally, we have a lot of difficulties getting to that 40 mark. However, this time round, there wasn't those 3 or 4 games between 36 and 40 points where we were sat in limbo. So, like, are the squads content now, or do they actually see a realistic push up the table? That's the real question. There's only 4 points between us and seventh place. So you've got to think from a squad perspective, especially with a game in hand, that they look at that and go, well, yeah, we can do that. Of course we can. That would that game in hand, that win, that puts us only a point away from playing European football next season. Surely the squad's got to be up for that, but it's just so unpredictable with Fulham. We're in a position now where we're exactly where I thought we would be. As I said a couple of weeks ago, we're 12 wins, 4 draws, 12 losses. So if you're a betting person, you say you go on the draw because Fulham have to be the middle of everything. We have to be perfectly balanced. We have to win as many as we lose. We have to have a goal difference of 0, etc. And it's a tough one to call. You've put me in a pickle. I'd love to be optimistic and say we're going to push for European football now, even if it's European Conference League. But I'm honestly not sure I trust the squads. We're too wishy-washy at the best of times.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing, right? The last 2 years in a row, we've fallen off a cliff at some point, right? Last year we did it at the end of January. The year before we did it with 10 games left. We just absolutely fell off a cliff in terms of performances and what was going in, right? I think genuinely, I do think that the end of this season will have a big impact on whether or not we keep Marco Silva as a manager for next year. Because I think European football would be a great enticement to get him to stay. But I he's almost responsible for that, if that makes sense. Like he needs to be able to show that he can get us across the line. Because here's the funny thing: if we fail to make Europe this year because another team finish the season strong and getting ahead of us, we can all accept that. If we fail to get Europe this season because we fall off a cliff again, we have to look at what's wrong there, because 3 years in a row of that happening is a pattern, and you have to be able to fix it. But we're talking about things that haven't happened yet. Obviously, just it is what it is. So going back into this game, AJ, we'll finish how we always do. Let's look at players to watch, players that are gonna make a difference in this game. For you on this one, can I get a couple of players to watch from both teams and a scoreline prediction, please?
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. For Fulham, as much as I've highlighted my concerns about the right defensive side of our defense, well, our right defensive side, to put that into better words, I also think the midfield's going to be such a struggle for us. And if this is one of those games where Berge decides that he wants to take a break, we're cooked. Honestly, because he's not going to be dropped. So if Berge starts and he decides that he's phoning this one in, we've got problems. So for that reason, Berge is a player to watch for me. For West Ham, I'm caught between Somerville and Bowen, and I can't split the two. I'm sorry. You're going to have to just accept two answers from me because I cannot separate the two of them. Scoreline prediction. My head says something like 2-2 to make it the 12-5-12. My heart says that we beat them 3-1 and move on to drawing or losing the next game and equalising the goal difference then.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean, mate. I know exactly. But for me, Fulham wise, I think that we saw an awful lot of good performances out of players on Sunday, right? I was very impressed with Oscar Bob. I want to see him continue that. I was very impressed with Alex Iwobi. I want to see him continue that. The player to watch for me is actually going to be Emil Smith Rowe. I think Smith Rowe has put in some really good performances of late. He's just not got the end product to match that. I know there's some fans that are really starting to put pressure on the fact that look, it's all good, he's playing well, but he's not scoring, he's not assisting, and that's where we need his numbers to be picking up a bit. And I sort of agree with that. I'm not 100% a stats man. I do like to watch football and go with what I see, and I've been absolutely impressed and happy with the performances I've seen from Evan Smith Rowe. I just want to see him actually score a goal, assist a goal, just do something that sort of merits his place being there. Because if he's not able to do that, then that's when we have to have a conversation about him again. And as happy as we all have been, and the way he's turned it around at Fulham this year, in terms of performances, we need to start seeing some end product to go with those performances. But West Ham wise, West Ham have a lot of good players, right? Aaron Wan-Bissaka arguably is too good to be in a squad that's in a relegation fight the way it is. You know, that you look at Thomas Souček, who's a player that always performs against us. He's a good player, but he always performs against us. You have to look at those three players for me. Out of like, but ignoring Bowen and Somerville because you've covered them, who we sort of have to be wary of because they could do stuff. Wan-Bissaka, when he gets the ball, is brilliant. He pushes the line really, really well, and he's the exact type of player that if West Ham do go down this year, you'd hope that Fulham would be brave enough to maybe try and go and sign. You know, it is as simple as that with him. So there's that. Scoreline wise for me, I am confident going into this game that Fulham will win, right? Because West Ham are really in their mire, and I saw them play against Liverpool or Liverpool. Saw the Liverpool highlights from the weekend, and they were rubbish. And you know, yes, they scored 2 goals, but the 5 goals they conceded were arguably all avoidable. And it's one of those things. Because of that, I don't see Fulham keeping a clean sheet because we can't. I don't see West Ham keeping a clean sheet because they can't. For me, this is going to be a sort of game where this could be 4-2, 3-1. It's hard to say, but I want to see it a comfortable home win. If Fulham don't win this game, it's going to be down to Fulham, not West Ham, if that makes sense. You know, we've had this conversation in the past about, you know, quality over fight, and that's going to be as simple as that. If West Ham win, it's because they fight for it more than we will, and that's not acceptable. So we have to get that win. AJ, thanks very much for joining me on this one. Appreciate you staying with me to do the second part of today's show. If you haven't already watched the first part of today's show, which came out this morning, which is our Spurs review, please go and watch it. Thanks everyone who has joined us of late. Everyone subscribing to the channel, sharing the channel. Get involved. Let us know your players to watch. Let us know your scoreline predictions. If you're a West Ham fan, who's just popped in to see what the opposition are thinking, welcome. You know, let us know what you think about the game too. You know, it is a friendly place to be. We do like to have a chat about football. That's what we're here to do. So, you know, thanks very much for joining us, AJ. Hope Fulham can get a win and we can enjoy the rest of our week before we have to sit down and sit down and preview the FA Cup game this weekend. Not much more to say, is there, other than Company Whites.